Arming teachers is a terrible idea. Let me give you a few reasons why. Welcome back to the College of Equity. My name is Brandon, and before I begin, I want to say how proud I am of the students who are participating in walkouts today across the country. Your generation is advancing the conversation on gun safety in this country, and I am so excited to see what your generation is going to be able to do that so many before you could not. Just know that as I walk into my second grade classroom tomorrow, I stand with you in solidarity, because enough is truly enough. Now let's get right into it. In response to the recent tragedy in Parkland, Florida, the Trump administration has made a number of policy suggestions, mostly through Twitter, about what we as a nation can do to make sure that things like this don't happen again. Now, while many of the policies have received mixed reviews, one policy caught my attention as an especially terrible idea. The thought of arming teachers is incredibly dangerous. Allow me a little bit of your time to share with you a few reasons why. Reason number one, guns degrade the learning environment. Plain and simple. So many kids in school systems today, especially high needs areas, are suffering from trauma both in and outside of the classroom. This is even more true for students of color. As more and more families of color get priced out of urban areas and are forced to move into more suburban and rural areas in search of affordable housing, the school districts that are receiving them don't always have staffs that reflect their cultures or their ethnicities. These cultural barriers often make students of color feel ostracized in their own classroom, as if they don't belong, or as if they're alone. Adding the guns into the hands of a teacher that a student might not necessarily trust only adds another level of stress to this equation. Putting a gun into the hands of teachers that a student might not necessarily trust could only make matters worse. And unfortunately, these cultural differences and misunderstandings often become violent. And as we've learned from the past 5 years, especially for Black and brown communities, misunderstandings often end up with our kids getting murdered. Point number two, more guns doesn't necessarily mean less problems. A 2001 Harvard study found that more firearms actually led to more unintentional firearm-related deaths. In the 4 states with the highest quantity of guns, it was found that the mortality rate was 7 times that of the states with the least quantity. Not only that, but a similar study in 2005 from Harvard showed that unsafe gun storage practices also lead to a heightened number of unintentional firearm deaths. Working in an elementary school, I can tell you that transitions are hectic, and I can only imagine that the case is even worse in high schools. And I shudder to think what could happen if one mistake on the part of a teacher caused an unintended incident. Reason number 3, the cost of this is pretty insane. Judging off of a tweet that Trump posted not too long ago, he suggested that only about 20% of public school teachers would be armed. As a second grade teacher, you know how much I love math, so let's get into it. Currently, there are about 3.2 million public educators working in the United States. An average handgun costs anywhere from $250 to $400. Now, if we take 20% of 3.2 million and multiply it by 250, a conservative estimate, we're looking somewhere in the realm of $160 million to purchase each teacher a gun. That doesn't even include ammunition, training, the supposed bonus that teachers would get for carrying a firearm, or the necessary equipment to store it. Now, as you can imagine, arming teachers has gotten real expensive real quick. Let me tell you of all of the much better things than guns you could buy for a classroom with that $160 million. For instance, you could buy 320,000 iPads for students who don't have them to utilize in the classroom. $160 million would also fully fund the school supplies of more than 5 million students in this country. Or hey, maybe we could even give that $160 million to the Oklahoma teachers that are about to go on strike because they're making just above the poverty line. And if you haven't heard about the Oklahoma teacher strike, do a little bit of research. The point is that $160 million can go a much longer way in actually improving the educational outcomes for students rather than purchasing guns for teachers. Reason number 4. Based off of the history of law enforcement and gun violence in this country, black teachers stand a lot to lose. Thinking back to 2016, where Philando Castile was murdered even after he let the officer know that he was carrying a firearm. As a black teacher, during a school shooting, when the police arrive, I don't want to be anywhere near a gun. There are so many things that could be done to increase school safety that don't involve putting guns into schools. Things like expanded mental health services in school, increasing the legal age to buy a gun, more strenuous background checks. And to be fair, the Trump administration has suggested doing things such as these on several different occasions. That about wraps it up. If you want to support the students who are walking out today, join the dialogue. Come up with a few ways to make our schools safer. And together, we can make education for everyone. Until next time, peace.